All right, well, today we are back to work on the 300 horsepower, 4-seat, supercharged mini jet boat rebuild. We've done a lot of work to this thing and we've got it to a good spot. And I honestly thought I really didn't have much left to do and I was just gonna knock out these last few projects in the solitude of my spare time. I wasn't gonna bother bringing you guys along. Simple stuff, really. But then my list expanded and expanded and expanded, and now we have a large list and some fab projects and some really cool and neat and exciting stuff that I want to show you. I can't help it. I want to bring you along. I want to show you. I think you'll like it. I think you'll enjoy it. Not to mention, one of the real reasons I brought you along for this one is because I've been taking this thing up the back river, used to it compared to the two-seater. And man, it gets wild back there. There's a bunch of trees down. There's a tree you gotta go under that you just clear. There's ones you gotta go around and you gotta jump. Like it's hectic, it's hair-raising, it's exciting, and I really just want you guys to experience it firsthand. I even got a brand new camera just to show you in better detail. That's how much I want you to come with me on a ride in the back river. But that being said, we've got work to do. So it's kind of a win-win, right? I get to knock out these projects, you guys get to come along with me, and we all get to go for a ride and have some fun. Right? Hey, so anyway, we've got a table full of parts, as usual, plus stuff we got to make and fabricate and all of that. But I just went and picked up a new Garmin. So this is something I've been kind of in limbo on because I'm selling the two-seat boat. I was holding off because I didn't want to, find someone who wanted it without the Garmin, for less, and then I could just use that Garmin. But we got a brand new one in the bag. Because these things are expensive, but went and picked it up, and we got all our other stuff, and we've got some nice weather today, which has been finicky here, the weather, on and off, so we should probably get to work. Let's start with the Garmin, because it should be a pretty easy install, and then we can move on, so let's get to it. Sorry, I've gotten used to not having it in the new boat, but I definitely would like to have one again. I think this one's actually maybe a slightly newer model than the one that's in my boat. Oh, all right. Let's get this puppy installed. I am so excited this day is finally here. I finally get to put a Garmin back in this thing. Normally I would have just wired this on the bench, but fortunately, even though I forgot to do that and made my life a little more complicated, it's really just 2 ring terminals. It is about as simple as it gets, especially because we already have all of the underdash wiring done. We don't have to route this back to the battery or through anywhere crazy. It's basically just got to go right under where it is, and there's a ground spot and a bus bar. So I spent some time tidying up the excess wires, the wires that we're not using and all of that. That's one thing. I can't stand having a bunch of bunched up wiring, because even if you do a clean job on everything else, that bunched up wiring makes things seem so messy. All right, well, that's pretty clean for tidying up the excess. It's got this molded in fuse deal, so I don't want to, cut it way back and cut that out, even though I won't ever need this much length. For now, get it nice and tidy. If I wasn't itching so bad to take the boat out tonight, I definitely would have done the more work for less work route and just gone ahead and taken the seats out. If the seats are out, you literally just get to lay on a nice flat floor and work on this wiring underneath the dash. But with the seats in, it's a little bit trickier. You gotta jungle gym your way down there, but luckily there is just enough room to lay flat and get under here and work on this wiring. We don't have a ton to do, but we wanted to get this tucked up and secured nicely. All right, time for the satisfying part. Don't get to do that too often. I guess let's make sure it powers up before I put the clips on. Okay, so like I said before, it would just turn on, but now it should turn on when I do that. Yeah, look at that. Oh, I'm so excited. Finally got a new Garmin. I think it's gonna make these back river rips even better. So I'm gonna tidy this up and then we'll move on. All right, Garmin is all set up. As far as I can tell, we won't really know until we put this thing in the water. It doesn't register your location until you're in the water. So that'll be the true test. And like I said, we definitely got to take advantage of this weather. It's still looking beautiful outside and it's calling for rain the next few days. So I definitely want to take you guys on the back river while the weather is mint. And then when we get back, we can dive into the major projects that we have left for this thing, and then hopefully we'll have time to go back out again and test those upgrades. But I just really want to take you guys on a ride. So one last thing I want to do before we go is finish modifying my Velcro bag situation. So I got all these different bags to Velcro in here because there's a lot of kind of unused space in here, and it's been working out great. And I have everything I need to take with me on and off the boat in one spot. Carry this on, pop the backpack down there, pouch there, and we're good to go. So it's all been working well. I just need to re-Velcro this one in a different spot so the engine cover doesn't hit it. And then I've got to add on these cup holders. That's one thing we're lacking still, is there's no cup holders up here, which is annoying. So I'm gonna try these little belt loop ones, but like this, Velcro to the wall, and see if that'll work. So let's knock this out real quick, and then we're gonna take this thing to the river and have some fun. Oh yeah, I think that's gonna be perfect. Mint. All right, let's roll. Really far apart, but we got all the spots. Let's go. So I got out on the river, and it was taking a little bit for the Garmin to start registering where we were and our speed and all of that, but it did start registering. However, it said I needed to activate it and register it with an app, which always seems like everything needs an app these days. So I decided before we head down the back river, I would go get that set up, get it working 100%, before we get into the sketchy stuff. And on my way out, I had promised these kids that I ran into on the beach that I'd show them a quick 360 in this thing. People always love these things and they want to see what they can do, so had to oblige. This is me telling you that we are in the no-wake zone, and once we get through the no-wake zone, we can start ripping. And the river gets tighter and tighter and tighter as we go through, so it gets more and more fun, and it's going to be rowdy. Just wait. There's one right there. He's probably going to duck under before when we get close. Oh, I lost him in the camera. Oh, he went under. So that's usually what you'll see. And then that's when you realize how many there are. When you see those everywhere when you're coming up on spots in the river. You see the little bubble and circle spot where they went under. So nice back here though. I love it. Look at that, dude. Today, man, it couldn't be better today weather-wise. For summer, it's not hot. Clear blue skies. This is everything. This is it, you know? Says it's supposed to rain the next like 4 or 5 days, so glad we made time to come today. I meant to get some more upgrades done, but you know, I couldn't wait. Just wanted to come out. It's been like raining every day for the past couple weeks, pretty much. You know, you gotta dodge the weather if you want to go out, so it's nice to get a rain-free day. Oh, and I got the Garmin working good. It's nice to have that back in there. I kind of forget it's there because I haven't had it for so long. I've done so many rides without one. I don't even think to look at it. Whereas before, especially in the little boat, I'd look at it all the time because it was in a good spot. It was right in the middle. So, you know, you check like It's kind of like if you're ripping a back road and you're not familiar with it, a twisty one, you kind of look to see, oh, is this going to be, you know, we got a tight corner coming up, a bunch of corners coming up. Yeah, dude, there was a lot of gators just went over there, which I'm not worried about it. They get out of the way, but there was a pair of them under a tree. And as I came by, they saw me. Oh, there was one right there. You can see the bubbles right there. The bugs are out too. I gotta get rolling back here in a second, but they jumped up and started flailing around. I've never seen them do that. I guess probably because they were in shallow water, they couldn't go under. Normally they just duck under the water. But yeah, anyway, I love this spot for sunset. It's great, but not with the bugs are ripping. Bugs are ripping. I ain't got no bug spray. But oh, here real quick. So look with the nav lights. Really happy with those. I'm glad I held out and managed to find those. But yeah, this is why I love coming out here. Aside from the bugs, again, so beautiful, so peaceful. Look at that sunset. Okay, I gotta go. Best work. Alright, well, we got the boat back in the shop. Super happy with the improvement. Garmin, great. Really the biggest thing, it is the little things. The cup holder, man, I'm so happy with how those cup holders worked out. I wasn't sure how I was going to attach them initially, but that method worked perfect. It kind of tucked down in between the floorboard there so they don't move around. Full drink in there while we were doing the rip and no problems at all. Didn't move, didn't splash hardly. It stays out of the sun because that's the problem. Sometimes I would just use these cup holders back here, but they're just getting blasted by the sun. So really happy with that. All the Velcro bag attachment situations have made a big difference. So that being said, it's time to get into the more major projects and get to work. I think the what we should do is just go ahead and put this thing on the lift, take it off the trailer, drop it down on the ground again. I'm excited. This is going to be some fun projects. And I get to do a big fab project. Couldn't ask for much more. Let's get to it. Much better. All right, well, now that we got this thing in a good working position, let me show you the first project we're gonna tackle. We're gonna work our way up in severity, of seriousness, of difficulty of the projects, but this is one that I'm just eager to see the results on, so we're gonna start with it. If you saw when we rewired the boat, we added basically the output for interior lights. It's all there, we just have to hook to it. So what I ended up going with is actually an underglow kit for a car. It just so happens to be kind of the perfect for the inside of a boat. We got long ones for the side, we got shorter ones for the front and rear. Now, the biggest reason I went this way is because I didn't want to use the roll-out sticky light strips. I can't stand them, they always fall off. I wanted something that I could mount solidly and not worry about. So I found this kit. It's basically an aluminum case that's solid, and we can bolt it into the boat. Not double-sided tape it, bolt it in. I think this is gonna be the way to go. To have something permanent that's not gonna fall down after we hit a couple wakes. So yeah, let's try to get these mounted up and see what this looks like. I think it's gonna look sick in that cockpit to have a nice full amount of light. Won't know till we try, so let's get to it. The only downside to doing these bolt-in lights is with these boats, there's not many places that you can bolt to where you don't see the from. So basically, we've got to drill through the boat and have bolt holes that are going to be visible. So I decided to use some countersinked M4 Allens and try to countersink them perfectly flush. So while you'll see the bolt, it's not sticking up. It's not something you're going to catch things on. It's not going to be in the way. Basically the cleanest way I could do it. I've had such terrible luck with those stick-on light strips, and I really wanted something that I wasn't going to have to worry about falling down, and we were able to get the bolts countersunk perfectly to where they're nice and flush and shouldn't be in the way and really shouldn't be noticeable. Not to mention we'll eventually wrap over all this and you probably won't see them anyway, but as much as I plan to wrap and sea deck this thing soon, sometimes you plan to do something soon and it takes a while, so I always try to do projects in a way where if I don't do that other thing that I plan to do soon, it's still decent for now, more or less. But either way, we managed to get both sides in. They weren't too bad, a little bit tricky to get to, but not too bad. But now we've got the trickiest one. This front one is going to be challenging because we're going to have to reach over and under the dash to try to tighten these bolts down. And one oversight on my part with these rigid lights is that they all fold and they're all attached by wires in the middle. So we have to use some double-sided tape, zip tie things in the middle. So they're not fully rigidly mounted, but as close as we could get. I just, I like things that bolt in. Things that I don't have to worry about double-sided tape getting hot and falling off. So even though it's a little more work, I think the longevity of this is definitely worth it. So fortunately, this rear one is a piece of cake to get to. I mean, it has the most access out of all of them, and we've got the countersink depth dialed, so the rear is going on pretty easy. And with that mounted, all that's left is to route the wiring, which fortunately, all of the wires are already at the front with the exception of this rear one because the two sides come out at the front and then the front one's up there. So all we have to do is route this one wire from the rear to the front and then we're done. So we don't have a bunch of wires crisscrossing back and forth and a mess to deal with, wires that can come loose and get messy. It's about as clean as we could get it. All right, well, all the lights are installed. Very happy with how that turned out. The flush mount and the bolts, that was my only gripe with doing it this way is, having to have bolts from the outside, but you can barely even tell it's there. Can't even feel it. So they're flush mounted. So anyway, I'm happy with that. They're really well secured. We do have to rely on a little bit of double-sided tape still. Now we're right there in the middle, but even if that tape fails, they don't fall down. They just aren't as tightly secured. So done. Oh, at least the install part. So just need to route all these wires to the control box. Well, mount the control box, wire it, and run all the wires to it nice and clean. Easy peasy. Just requires laying upside down under the dash again. But hey, I'm used to it. So the thing I forgot to do when we installed the Garmin is something I'm trying to remember to do when we install this control box, and that is do as much of my prep work with the wiring and terminals and stuff as I can on the bench before we crawl up under the dash, because this is one of those places you don't want to get in there and then forget one little tool that you don't have to do your job that you need to do. So as much as it's nice that all of the wiring is up here at the front already, it means we do have a lot of excess to secure. So just like with the Garmin, we're trying to keep this as clean as possible. These have these molded ends on them with these specific connectors, so it's not really something that we can nicely and cleanly cut the excess off of and then just shorten them up. So we've got some excess bundles of wire to deal with, but at least all of our wiring excess bundles are all kind of in the same spot up here, and all we can do is try to make it as clean as possible so it stays looking nice. All right, everything's in and wired up. It's moment of truth time. We already have the button labeled. Oh, there we go. Nice. Hold on, let me get the switch. When I say switch, I mean remote. Okay, so that was max brightness. And then let's do... It's cool that it defaults to red. Red's kind of my color. Let's turn the lights off. Yeah, that's solid. Let's try to change it to blue again. Oh, that's pretty bright. The blue's a lot brighter. Green. That's sick. That's perfect. It looks so gangster. It's up the engine bay nicely. The floors, I guess there's a little bit of a dark spot in the middle where they don't shine all the way out there, but other than that, engine bay, you can see, and then if we close this, see what it looks like without. Oh yeah, dude, that is dialed. Dialed. Let's go back to red. I'm stoked. Oh, it's the little things. Let's try out some different colors. I'm gonna use the light here. Let's try purple. Darker purple. We'll decide. We got other work to do. But our interior lights are done. See our switch here. Boom. Easy peasy. And those should never be annoying and fall down on us. So that is all I wanted. All right, let's move on. Let's get the trim done. I want to do that. I want to make sure these parts are right and replace this reverse bucket trim deal and see if we can get our trim working. That would be sick. Another benefit to having the boat on the lift is we can just lift it up. Thane told me when I got this boat that one of the things that needed to be fixed was the trim. There's these trim guides, they were broken, which meant we had no trim. And it didn't necessarily bother me, but I thought if we can fix it, we might as well fix it. It'd be nice to see what this boat's like at different trim levels. So he was able to find the part number for me. It was kind of tricky because it said specifically it didn't work for the 300, even though to his knowledge, all the reverse buckets are the same. So I went ahead and ordered them, and I thought it'd probably be right. It would make sense that they're all the same, but you never know with things like this. Sometimes they make small little changes between models, but I'm hoping they're right. I'm hoping it works just because we might as well have it working, whether we use it or not. I got it working on the other boat when it wasn't originally and hardly touched it after I set it, but might as well have it. So this is all we needed. It's these trim pieces here, but they don't seem to sell these. Since we had to buy the whole reverse bucket assembly anyway, I just decided to go ahead and use the new one. You know, we might as well. It was surprisingly inexpensive. For an OEM part, it was like $90 for this entire assembly with the trim guides and everything. So at least now we've got a spare one if we ever smash it. You can see the one that came on the boat has been smashed and rewelded at one point, so not out of the realm of possibility. All right, I think our reverse bucket is complete. I don't know if we can trim it with it not running, but let's try it. I don't think we're gonna know until we take it out on the water. But it's all new, it's all replaced. We've now not got a broken guide and a whole new reverse bucket. So, you know, we're in pretty good shape. So that being said, I'd like to go test it out tonight because tomorrow it's gonna be super busy. I'd like to finish this other project first so we can see what the results of it are. And that project is in the engine bay here. So one downside of these boats is they are quite loud when you're riding around and cruising on the river. And really the most obnoxious part, as much as it sounds cool, is the supercharger whine. It is loud. Eventually gonna put the rugged setup in here with the headsets and whatever, but there's plenty of times from one spot to another on the river, and it'd be nice for it to be quieter in those scenarios. So I've got a plan. One of the things I learned with my Fummins build is I originally had just the air filter, and the turbo whistle was insane. So I put a factory air box in and modified it to get the filter in there, and the whistle went away. So we're gonna do kind of the same thing here. We're gonna build a filter enclosure. Thinking of kind of an elaborate plan of cutting and bending pieces, making a square box and all that, but it dawned on me that I might have a piece of material in the container that would work for the box, and we should hopefully have the other material we need, you know, for the ends and stuff. Aluminum scraps and U-bends. Ho ho! We do have the piece I was thinking of. Even larger one. This should do it. I'm trying to get away with using the smaller of these scrap 5-inch pieces, even though I'll probably never have a use for the large one. These are leftovers from the intake I built for my Turbo LS and my Vet, and I kind of forgot about them. And when I was thinking of ways to build this box, I had this whole plan of building a square box with a side, and then it just dawned on me that I had this piece and that this would actually work perfect and save us a lot of fabrication time. So basically, we just need to build some end caps with some 3-inch holes in the center, so that way our intercooler piping can slide through, and then our filter is going to go on the inside of this box. So it's pretty simple, but also, you know, we've got to get it right. We've got to get these tolerances tight, and we're trying to make this box, you know, a good size to fit in there comfortably and not be too cumbersome, but we definitely want it to be big enough to where we get good airflow. So after cutting out the centers, now it's time to cut out the circles. It's always tricky no matter what you're using, really, besides a plasma cutter or a laser or a water jet. It's tricky to cut out circles, but the bandsaw is generally my best chance at getting the rough shape of the circle, you know, getting most of the corners cut off and having something that resembles a circle, and then all we got to do is go to the belt grinder and clean it up and work the edges down. That is why the belt grinder is kind of my number 1 fab tool in the shop, maybe even above the TIG welders, because it's just so useful to fit and finish and getting things shaped up just right. So I had to do a little more trimming. I made them a little large, better too big than too small, and it's looking good. Everything's coming together, but then I had a realization. We have to make this part removable. I'm gonna make some little angled pieces that go down and bolt in the side. The only thing that I'm unsure on is just getting it to seal nicely, but one step at a time. Let's use some of this, cut and bend ourselves some little angle brackets, weld them on, bolt them on, and then we can weld the cap on. One step at a time. Since this was kind of a last minute change of plans for my original mental build plan blueprint, I had overlooked a little bit of the crucial details of it needing to be removable, the bottom part, because part of what was going to make this so much easier than the original plan that I had was that just weld a couple end caps on and weld the pipes into there, and bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. And then it dawned on me that that would make it unserviceable. We'd have to weld the caps on with the filter in there, which, I mean, A, we can't change it. B, if it ever came loose or something, or we couldn't clean it, obviously it's not going to work, which means we have to make it removable, which means we had to make these little brackets to bolt it in. Now, there's no idea I had on how to do this that I was in love with, but this is the one that I disliked the least. These are going to weld on and then basically bolt into the side of the canister. The only thing I'm worried about with this is that the rib nuts will be a little bit tight up against the filter, but one step at a time. Like I said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's kind of the way it goes with fabricating custom stuff like this, is you kind of got to think on your feet. You have a plan in your head and it sounds good and you think through it, but then when the time comes to build it, something comes up and you realize, oh wait, I'm going to do that way, and then how am I going to do that this way, and then what should I do for this problem? And that's kind of the fun of it, honestly, and it's what makes it satisfying and rewarding, is the problem solving. So we've got our little brackets welded on, and now we just need to drill our holes, put some rib nuts in, and see if it all works. Not in love with it, not my favorite design, not something I would have necessarily planned from the start, but for a gotta come up with something to make this work solution, I think it's gonna do the job. Especially with these rib nuts, it should be serviceable without being too much of a pain to put together and take apart. And fortunately, we got all our holes in the right spot and the end cap bolted back on. So now we can commit and weld the other one on. Now, one other mistake with my lack of forethought is that if I had known this was going to be removable when I started cutting these pieces, I would have made the end caps a little bit thicker. But it really was just going to be a canister welded together holding an air filter. It didn't really need to be strong. But with this thin material, it can be pretty warpy. So welding those brackets on, things tried to warp. And then this end I'm trying to keep from warping. But all in all, it's coming together. Yeah, this is just like the tiniest bit too short. If we went an inch or two longer than that, by 2 inches, we should be good. And then still have room to come out here, go somewhere. That sounds good. That's about right. Another thing that can happen when you're fabricating is you have a pretty simple, quick and dirty plan to build something, and then it spirals and spirals a little more, and that's kind of where we're at. I was going to just use a coupler and attach it to the existing pipe that was already there, but then I decided, well, if I'm going to be welding the pipe in anyway, I might as well just make it long enough to replace that one entirely, which means now we got to bead roll it, which we don't really have to. It's not under boost, but I think it'll help kind of hold everything in place and, make it nicer and better. Might as well. All right, looks like we're good to go. With our successful test fit in the boat complete, we could go ahead and commit and weld this thing out. It's always important to test fit before you weld something, because cutting tacks is not fun. I hate having to cut tacks because it's a pain and it's never the same. But Cutting apart a weld, a whole different story. So I wanted to make sure it fit good first, and then we can weld it out. And our warpy warp piece is doing the warp thing, downside to the thin metal. So I used my small hammer, i.e. my 1/4-inch ratchet, to straighten it out some. And then it's time for the real moment of truth that I forgot to test fit for, and that's if the filter fits. I was worried about that. Just hits the rib nuts. So I'm gonna have to trim them all down a little bit. Just a little bit. This is another problem-solving scenario where you got to get creative, because I could not fit any sort of cutoff disc in here, so I switched to a grinding wheel to just grind them down, and fortunately they were soft enough to where I was able to grind them to the depth that I needed to give me just enough clearance to get the filter in, and now it actually works. All test fits complete. All right, well, we now got our box. Now we could just weld a piece of 3-inch on here and use that flexi hose out, but that wouldn't be very my style. So we're gonna build the little aluminum snake out, just because why not? So I had my game plan for basically to the filter box and then 90ing like this from the filter box to keep it under the hood and give us height to be able to close the hood. Hadn't really thought far past that though, so once I got this piece cut and fit to shape and marked, I wanted to go ahead and tack it out, tack it in place. We know that that's kind of a constant, it has to be there. But where we go from here is something I'm not too sure on, because we're trying to minimize noise here. So we don't want the intake pointing at us because it's going to act kind of like a megaphone and we're going to hear it. But obviously we don't want it going into some space where there's going to be a bunch of trapped hot air and then we're going to have hot intake air temps. So it's kind of, this whole thing really is a sacrifice of performance and, you know, comfort, noise. And it sounds so silly to say that, but it's one of those things. It's so nice to not have something that's too loud, depending on what you're doing with it. So I decided to try to point it back into this corner. I mean, everywhere in this engine bay is going to be hot, so it doesn't really matter all that much where we get our air from, as long as it's a place where we're not going to get a huge amount of water potentially into, and where there's not going to be specifically a collection of hot air, you know, somewhere like right by the exhaust manifold. Other than that, I don't think it's going to matter too much where the air comes from. Okay, well that solves that problem, which means we can point this to the rear. I think we need to point it to the rear if we want to avoid the noise. So we're going to try that. We're going to weld this, cut this, weld this, and then mark them all together. So it used to be for me when I would fabricate stuff, especially, you know, tubing, exhaust, things like that, is I would try to avoid tacking it or welding it together until the last minute. I'd try to tape it all up and make sure it works just in case I needed to change it. But I realized along the way that it's better to go ahead and weld it out in small pieces when you can, because the pieces are a lot more manageable. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and weld this 90 out to the canister, because it's a lot easier for me to move that around to get a good angle at it and weld it while it's just the canister and the 90. Same with the other 90 and the straight piece. I can get those nicely in this clamp here and weld around them very easily. But if all these pieces are tacked together, it's going to be really tricky to do that. So it is riskier because you could weld it out and then find out that something doesn't fit quite right because you've never had it all together in one shot. But, you know, in this scenario, we've got a lot of room to play with, and there's not really a huge risk in my eyes. So we got both pieces welded individually and marked up in the boat to where we needed to weld them together. And now it's time for the final weld. And you can see how much trickier it is to weld this. You know, I've got to have a clamp holding the vise on the table because the thing's too heavy and it's trying to tip over. I've got to weld at an awkward angle. So luckily we only have to do this for one weld because of the way we did the rest of them. So one of those things. A little riskier, but definitely easier if it works. Pretty dang happy with that, to be honest. Really better than I had envisioned in my head. The whole making it split apart thing was a wrench, but we persevered, got it done. We'll let it cool down, and tomorrow we'll wrap this up and then go hit the river for some testing. See if our trim works. Well, we probably won't see the lights yet because be in the morning. We'll have to do another one at night. Oh no. And then this, test the intake, see if it's quieter. Hopefully it wasn't all for nothing, but even if it was a fun project. But we'll find out for sure tomorrow. All right, well, we got about 2 hours till the weather goes bad to finish this up. It is also going to be extremely busy today, probably. So let's make sure this shuts. Oh, you're in the way. Back up. Yep. All right. Yeah, we got plenty of room back here. Okay, so just need a little flat bracket, really. Then we can put this all together for good. This looks like a good size piece. Well, it's time to put the air filter in now that we should be done welding on this thing. You know what, real quick, I'm gonna clean this. The most rewarding part when you're fabricating something is there's so much time of mocking it up, putting it together, taking it apart, putting it together, taking it apart, and you know when you're doing that, you know you got to take it back apart. But the cherry on top, the moment where it feels good, is when you put it together and you're not planning on taking it back apart. It's not saying you won't, but you're not planning on it. All right, that should be pretty sealed up, I think. Okay, hopefully final install. We still got to drill our mount hole, but other than that, should be ready. One thing I didn't account for or was overly optimistic on was the ability to drill this hole. It being where the intercooler is and stuff, there was no way to get to it. So I ended up using a carbide burr to basically grind the hole in and then drill the rest of it at an angle. And then we were able to get our bolt in, get our bracket tightened down, and have our intake officially fully installed. All right, intake is done. Pretty dang happy with that. Now, I will have to drill a drain hole or two in there, just in case any water does get in there, it doesn't just sit in there. But it's nice and solid on there. So yeah, still got a few things left that I want to do, but like I said, we got weather coming in. Hopefully, it looks like we still got some blue skies. Let's get this thing back on the trailer, head down to the river, test it out, see if all the improvements actually did anything. At least we know the interior lights work, but the rest of it is still kind of unknown. All right, we are officially back in business. Ramp is definitely busy today, but I managed to squeeze in right there between a couple poles versus way up there. So as soon as we left the boat ramp, I had the loud beep of shame, the Sea-Doo loud beep. If you have ever had a Sea-Doo, you know what I'm talking about. And that meant we had a code, and we had a code for the map sensor. So I was trying to find just a beach spot just so I could tinker with the boat real quick and change the map sensor, because it was feeling a little less peppy. And I wasn't sure if it was the intake or the map sensor or what, but I just wanted to find a spot to pull off and mess with it. But it was, as expected, quite busy. Popping McPoppingston. It's crazy out there. I've never seen it like this. So changing the map sensor did fix and eliminate the engine code, but it still felt like it was a little bit down on power, and I couldn't tell if it was me or the placebo effect of the noise difference, but I wanted to take it back to the house and maybe play with the intake a little bit and see if that was potentially causing a restriction, because as much as I want it to be quieter, I don't want it to make less power, you know? We need good power, so we got to figure this out. Alright, well, boy, it was hectic out there. I normally avoid going on super busy days like that. But it was fun. It was cool to be out there and see so many people out there, and people asking about the boat and seeing the paddle boat. That was cool. I've never seen that going by while I was ripping on the river. And I got out just in time because it started raining. But that being said, the intake did way more than I was hoping. I mean, I was hoping it would be just at least noticeable. Eliminated that high-pitched supercharger ear-piercing whine, which some of you may be like, why would you want that gone? It sounds so cool. And I agree. In small doses, it sounds sick. But when you're cruising for long distances, it gets annoying. It's like your ears feel like they're going to bleed because it's just so loud. Now, the only problem is, and it could be placebo effect coincidence, that I'm worried this is restrictive. This is too restrictive. Because we got the map sensor code immediately, which they could be totally unrelated. This boat is known to eat map sensors. It's not out of the realm of possibility that it just happened to eat a map sensor right after we did a new intake. But it's hard not to want to connect the two, right? So it also seemed like it might be slower. And I don't know the noise difference. I mean, noise is a big part of something feeling fast and exciting. And when you hear that supercharger, like, you know you're ripping. So I'm wondering if having that gone made it feel slower. Now, there's a few ways we could potentially remedy this, but I think what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna try, because it's easy enough, is I'm just gonna cut it right here. Since it cut down the noise so much, I think we can take the chance on cutting it here, because it is so much quieter. And then if it doesn't work or whatever, if we wanna go back, we'll just weld it back together. I can make it look nice again. But that's easy enough. We just cut it right there, get rid of a bend, get rid of some more of the distance, get it better air priority, and just see what that does. So let's do that. Let's do it. And then we'll take this thing back out. Shulman's on his way over because I've been meaning to take him out on the boat. Oh, and the trim's working. So that could be a factor as well. I did trim it, down and up, and you could feel it dig into the water and then come back out. I didn't play with it too much because it was so choppy out there, but it's working. So that was successful as well. I put a lot of time into this intake, so I want to make sure it does what it's intended to do, but without robbing us of power either. That's, So let's pull this pipe out. Let's cut it. All right, cool. Revision number 2 installed. Let's see how that performs and sounds. So revision 2, definitely a success in the sound department. It is louder without that pipe pointing backwards. You hear a little bit of the whistle, but it is way better. It is not ear piercing. However, I still feel like it might be down on power. It's hard to know, but we're gonna just enjoy it as is and go for a back river rip and show Shulman what mini jet boating's all about. It's fun taking other people who drift in this thing because it's like the closest thing to drifting on the water. You're literally sliding sideways. We just gotta try not to get too wild and smash into anything. started bending it back some. I think I can get it most of the way back. I'll need to take the piece of Lexan out, heat it up, and hammer it back flat. But I've got it to almost close again. So that's good.
Not too bad.
I got this light bent back. I mean, this windshield frame was already smushed over here. This was not me. This was another boat ran into it at one point. So I already honestly needed to get that back out. So maybe I'll take all the windows out and, you know, try to straighten this out a little bit. It's just harder than you would think because it's also
solid.
It's so thick. You go to bend it and you're like, oh, this is solid. But yeah. What I didn't take into account, two things. Thing one, now this windshield, when it sits on this light bar, it's way taller than the frame. So my reference point is that frame, and I'm like, we're good, we're gonna clear. But this is like, I don't know, 6 inches taller, and it was probably worse because the light's pushed in a little bit. It's probably like up here. That's thing one. Thing two, we got a lot of rain, and it takes a couple days for the river to actually rise. It'll pour down rain, and then you'll come out here and it's the same. And then a couple days later, it's high. And I didn't think about it. I've gone through that tree so many times. I thought we were good, and I should have. Not that you would know, like when you go under it idling.
I thought we were good.
I thought we were good.
And then last second, I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
I like ducked down real quick, so I was.
I always duck
we're
anyway,
alive.
just
We're
out of
alive,
instinct.
We're good, but this thing is sick. It's so fun.
Yeah. Also, I guess if we're ever gonna do low clearance stuff like that, we close the windshield. If that was closed, it probably would have never hit.
It might have nicked it, but
And even if it nicked it, it's hitting a solid corner. It's not hitting this, which is leaned against that, and because it probably bent this a little bit. Yeah. I just like having it open because it's nice to, you know, I might just take the middle out, honestly, for a little while. Because I never close it.
Right.
Like almost never do I close it, unless I'm going to do a 360 or something.
Right.
Just because you get wet if you don't close it.
Right.
All right, well, I'll mess with that later. Let's hit the road, Jack. All right, well, we got the boat back in the shop. Still a little sad about my poor window. This thing got smoked, but I did realize I'm gonna try to fix this one, but I can't just get a new one. I just have to try to paint match it or, you know, have it mismatched till the boat gets wrapped. But I do need to push this windshield frame up a little bit. It's a little more lean back than the other. It's such a shame. Like all the other damage that was here didn't bother me, but this, because I did it, does bother me. It's like, just a slight miscalculation. So I went out again, I took Alberto out yesterday to show him the back river and stuff. He just got a jet ski up and running, and cool because he's like, oh, I understand why you come out here all the time now. Like, this is awesome. I'm like, yeah, at least somebody gets it. I'm not crazy. I like coming out here. It's so nice and peaceful. But we ran into an older gentleman on the back river that rides his jet ski through there a lot, and he asked about the trees. Like, oh, came up to us? And he's like, did you go under the tree or around it? And I was like, well, you see, funny you asked, because I was going under it. I've gone under it like a dozen times, but the last time I tried to go under it, I smashed my windshield, and he's like, yeah, it sunk. And I was like, oh, it makes sense. Like, the water level did rise some, but it also sunk down. So he said he's going to try to, like, trim it to where it won't sink anymore, but you still have the arch there. Because that's kind of what makes that back river so fun, you know? Like, you have obstacles, but obviously they get to a point where they're just blocking the river, which is what that is right now. But anyway, miscalculation on my part, but it happens. But I mean, every time I've gone under that tree, it feels like I'm gonna hit it. So this time was no different, except I did actually hit it. But really happy with the boat. Oh, last thing while I have you here. I was trying to make this short and sweet and to the point, but here I am rambling on. I still can't decide if the intake's restrictive or not. If this isn't restrictive, it's perfect. A little bit of noise, not too much noise, great. But I still feel like it's restrictive. So what I'm gonna do is go out and I'm gonna bring the other intake that was on there and swap them and see if I can feel a difference back to back. If I can, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's that air filter being too small, which if that's the case, we'd have to rebuild this entirely. But we could build like a square box with a lid cover and like 3.5 to 4 inch and no restriction and still cut the noise down. I don't know. There's a lot of ways we can go about it. But let me know what you think. What would you do? I'm happy with how this came out. I just, I think we're going to need a V2 if we want to keep it. Unless it's not having any restriction at all, which I will know soon when I take this thing back out, and I'll put that one on and find out for sure. But that being said, it was a long one, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to end it here. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Let me know what you think of the boat projects. Probably done on working on this thing for a while, besides some tinkery bits. And finally get back into the other stuff. It's just been so fun. I just love taking it out. So I couldn't help. I really wanted to knock these projects out. So I had to bring you along. But let me know if you enjoyed it. And yeah, can't wait to see you next time. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye. Goodbye, guys.